Oh, I have scrolled to the wrong part. All right.
Now on to the show.
Welcome to Cyclops is Waiting For Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast with Wolverine and the X-Men, episode 4, Overflow. I'm Rod, and I have to say, this is a terrible title for this episode. But I like it because it's storm-centric. But, yeah, anyway, you can find me on social media everywhere at either Rod Kim or Rod Kim Rocks. Based on how we're spacing these episodes out and when we're recording them, maybe TikTok, we don't know, or whatever new platform comes up. I signed up for the Neptune app just in case, because I don't know.
It'll still be in the 90-day window when this goes live. So
75.
It'll still be within the 75-day window when this goes live.
Everything is dumb because it's like a 90-day extension could have been signed, but then it was only signed for 75. But also, like, nothing has happened since that extension
at all.
It's wild.
And I am JC, the John Carl, on all social media, occasionally posting on Whiskey and Waffles, and I think there might be some live streaming happening, maybe, I don't know.
Oh, nice.
But I do want to give a quick shout out to X-Men director Larry Houston, because Larry just reshared the Ron Wasserman interview that Rod and I were there for Nerd Sync. And he actually made sure not to just point out that it was like an interview with Ron, but he actually said the documentary from Nerd Sync, which I thought was pretty dope.
That was pretty cool. That's where all of us met Ron for the first time. That was
and he's still friends with us. So right. Weird.
So friends with me is an even weirder thing. I think you texted me like that, like I'm inspiring to you just by sheer fact that I've survived this long.
Yes, because you almost went to the wrong city for a podcast panel.
Yeah. And also,
because didn't you say I almost Rod Kim'd it? Like you turned yourself into a verb?
I did a classic Rod. I almost did a classic Rod because at the time of this recording and at the time of that panel, 4 days before, I was taking two friends, and I actually invited John, if he wanted to come, to a Lunar New Year celebration I go to every year. And this year it wasn't on Lunar New Year because Lunar New Year like happens on a Wednesday, so it was happening, I thought, the Sunday before. We get there and the stuff is set up, but no one's doing anything. I'm like, what happened? And I'm looking like, why is it not on the Santa Anita Mall? Like, why is it not on the Santa Anita Mall calendar? And I finally look, it's like, it was Saturday. So the stuff was still set up for it, but it wasn't happening. I was like, I missed New Year's. That's me. Like, that's what happened. That's how bad it is.
Cyclops is Waiting For Me is our bi-weekly podcast series. We're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode that we can find. This podcast started with the original 1992 X-Men the Animated Series, building up to the release of X-Men 97. Along the way, we finished that X-Men Evolution, the first season of X-Men 97, and we launched our companion interview show, the Xavier Files. And since it's like February, we should probably start booking more of those for this year. Since season 2 of X-Men 97 isn't even announced yet for 2025, we are dedicating the entirety of this year to Wolverine and the X-Men.
And some quick reminders, we're a recap show about a series that started over 15 years ago, and then I think we did the math, like the episodes we're on right now happened 16 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, if you don't want to spoil for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. We're currently not sponsored by or affiliated with Marvel Animation, Disney, or Disney Plus in any way.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. Speaking of, at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook. And, I probably could, TikTok. Yep, I didn't update the script. TikTok is there again. Who knows if it will be in 2 months.
I was going to say, we should probably just record both. And then whatever happens.
we're going to switch it out. Right. Come on.
TikTok is or isn't going away. There you go. And now onto the
TikTok
show.
is a thing, maybe.
Yeah. TikTok once existed. There's the only thing that's true. Now onto the show. Today we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 4, titled Overflow. Once again, terrible title. It aired on February 6, 2009. Currently sits at a 7.3 star rating on IMDb. So this is what you described last episode as like the beginning of our mission of the week kind of video game setup almost, with Zordon, Xavier signing missions. So once again, we get the same boilerplate previously on that we've gotten for every episode.
I want every episode to start with Xavier's having the migraine head's gonna explode.
Right.
That's all I want.
They got their money's worth out of that initial, first 15 minutes of the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
Then it opens up on a desert, and there's a man stranded in the desert, and he passes out. Someone on a camel comes along and finds him, tries to help him, and the passed out man opens his eyes. Yeah, passed out man opens his eyes, and you see that they're darkened.
Yeah, it's just straight up black pupils.
And because I knew this was a Storm episode, I was like, I know who this is. But he touches the hand of the person trying to help him, and he just transfers his whatever being into the camel guy, and then that guy rides off. Then the intro sequence happens.
So that guy's dead.
Yeah, or shortly will be, because he's in the desert and already like dehydrated and everything.
Yeah, like I did think it was kind of funny. He was in like a business suit too. It was like a torn up business suit, but he was in like more formal attire than anybody else who is seen within the African region of this episode.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you said he's dead, because as of this recording, the first 2 episodes of
You're Dead.
Yeah, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man came out, and everyone that I know have seen it has made the same commentary about one of the fight scenes. I think it was the second episode where Spider-Man like ricochets a brick back at some kid.
Yes.
Like, that kid's dead. Everybody's saying like that kid died. Like,
yes. I
think it would be, so just putting this out there, because I'm not going to do it, but if there's anybody who has like a macabre, or like even like not even horror, but like, and macabre is probably the best way to put it, like kind of a podcast idea or whatever, it'd be cool if you had a show called like They Died, or They're Dead, and you point out every time in a movie or an animated show or something that like someone wasn't showing have died, but like through physics they died. You know, like that kid who got knocked out by a brick was like, no, he's dead now. Like,
yeah.
Or this guy in the desert. Like,
if only we knew a science podcaster who we could ask these questions to.
I was just on a panel with her. I don't know if she wants to speak to me anymore.
Quick Easter egg from that Spider-Man episode. If you looked at the names when they were doing the chat going back, Screwball is one of the user handles, which is a Spider-Man villain who is basically a prank influencer, so to speak.
That's funny. Okay. Oh, yeah. You know, I saw that one of the breakdowns. Yeah, that was funny. There was Zach Cherry's in there too. The same guy he was in Shang-Chi as the live streamer, and he was in another Spider-Man movie. He was like, do a flip.
Yeah.
And he's in Severance. He's killing it. Good for you, man.
I did not know his name, but I knew the person you were talking about.
I only know his name because of how often he pops up. So everybody's like, hey, Zach.
Yep.
So when it comes back from the opening credits, we're at the mansion, and Logan is asleep, and Xavier
with the cowboy hat on the end of his bed too. I love that the cowboy hat was on the night or the corner post. That's
awesome. And Xavier is speaking to him telepathically, because it's in that same whispery voice we heard earlier. And this is where I was saying, like, it's interesting that it feels like Xavier is tied to the body, but you made a good point about it might be tied to that specific location because of the events of the ripple effect. So Xavier, that might just be where like Cerebro is in the future, or in the vicinity of, or something,
or he just knows that that's the easiest spot to get in touch with him, because then he doesn't have to search around the past.
Yeah, that's true. And it's funny though, because like it's physically audibly coming from that location instead of just everywhere. So Logan gets up and starts following the voice, and then you see Emma Frost following him through the mansion. I love her commitment to the outfit though. It's the middle of the night, and she's still wearing the whole furry getup and everything. Like, not furry getup, like the furry bikini thing.
Emma needs to look perfect at any given time, just in case.
Yeah,
that is Emma Frost.
Although, who was it January Jones that played Emma Frost in one of the X-Men movies?
In New Class,
something like
or
that.
First Class.
First Class, I think. Yeah, didn't she have I think she had more. There was a scene. I think she had more of like a lingerie kind of thing going on. I might be misremembering that. I'm not sure. But I didn't. I expected Emma to like still be on brand like After Hours. I just didn't expect to see the cape and everything.
Oh yeah, there's a shot where she's just in straight up lingerie.
Okay,
I
remember.
I had double checked on it. Yes, that was a thing.
So I was like, I kind of,
because that was like more of like her Hellfire Gala, or not Hellfire Gala, Hellfire Club outfit inspiration. So.
Yeah. So I kind of thought like, oh, maybe she'll be wearing, but she's still committing to the cape even in the middle of the night. Yep. So good for her. So when Logan gets there, Xavier pulls Logan into the astral plane with him because he says it's like the I guess that's his explanation of how he can like kind of transcend time.
Yeah,
it's like
his phrasing was it's a meeting of the minds, so to speak. But
yeah, I love it. 2000s sci-fi speak. I did notice. I don't know if this is on purpose or it's just me reading into it. Xavier's X-Men logo.
You never read into anything.
Xavier's X-Men logo on his chest was kind of tattered, but it almost looked like the Soviet sickle symbol.
I think that's you reading into it.
Okay, but it's because it was missing just the top part, and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Because what would that mean in this context? But he warns Logan of something terrible coming, so he shows him Africa 20 years ago for Xavier, but present day for or near present day for Logan.
Yeah, like within the next week or so, basically.
Yeah, and he was like, a catastrophe so massive happens that it wipes out the entire continent.
Yeah, specifically says no survivors on the continent of Africa.
Yeah, it was just so crazy to think of because Americans specifically have a hard time conceiving how large Africa is, or really how large any continent outside of America is. Like, so that's insane. And he's like, what you won't believe is who did it. He's like, it was Storm.
So population as of 2018, I'm not going to go to the exact year.
Yeah.
1.25 billion people.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah. So that's how. So let's assume conservatively 1 billion people are still on that continent. Like that's a decimation. That's wiping out like what 15% of the world's population or something like that.
Maybe more, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's like Storm does it, and Wolverine's like, she wouldn't, and then
he's like, but she did.
She does, yeah. So he gets out
and she killed herself in it when it happens.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and
I think that's why like it's insinuated like nobody knows why she did it because she also went down. So
you have to
can't really ask her about it after the fact.
So now you have to recruit her first because this can't happen. You still need her to prevent the future that started this whole thing at the end of hindsight. Logan leaves the astral plane, whatever manifestation, and sees Emma and locks her in. It looks like solitary confinement, like kind of. He locks her in like a room that looks very small. Looks like he's like, you're not going anywhere. Did I read that wrong? Yeah,
I think he did. I think that was he walked out of the room and let the door close behind him, not he locked her in the room.
Okay.
You really think that Wolverine wants to off Emma in this series?
I could have sworn that the way it showed it was like he like pushed, like after they left the room, he like put her in a room and like closed the door. Oh, bless you. Lucy's sneezing back here.
Just distract from the fact that you got something wrong. Be like, my cat's cute.
You see her there?
Yep.
And so Beast and Wolverine.
He basically calls her out though for like spying because he doesn't trust her still at this point.
And Beast and Wolverine are looking at a weather map basically, and they're looking for Storm. And Beast is like, well, there's no weird like anomalies or anything, so we can't really find her. But then Wolverine's like, well, that's good because that means it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, but they need to use Emma because trying to find a single person in the entirety of the continent of Africa, little hard to do without a psychic.
And that's assuming she's there at that specific time. They don't know where she is. She could be anywhere in the world. She's probably there, but she could be anywhere. So they use Emma to find Storm. They
have a great back and forth before she does it though, where she's essentially saying like, you need to stop manipulating me because you just keep like dangling the carrot in front of me, and if I do this, that ends today. And then Wolverine's like, well, you're the one who's manipulating us, like, because he just doesn't trust her. And they just have like the tension between them is fantastic.
They're just gonna go do it. That's how these always end up, right?
No. Wolverine and Emma don't bang.
Watch that be my dumb prediction for this series.
If they bang in this because of your prediction, I'm going to scream.
The best part is if people who have seen the series are like, that didn't even happen when it originally ran. I don't know how it changed.
Mandela affected it.
Yeah.
Good, Rod. Good.
So Emma, even to my surprise, it's pretty straightforward. She straight up finds Storm, and
Well, she almost walks out too. Like she's like right before that, she's like, "This ends, or I'm done." And Wolverine has to like kind of like eat crow because it's like, yeah, if she walks out, we can't find her, and then
everything ends.
A billion people are dead. So
yeah. So Emma,
but yeah, then it's like a cool CG effect of like a bunch of people and kids walking by, and it's like, bam, Storm at the center.
It's very similar to the X-Men movies, like showed Cerebro working, searching for people. But yeah, so Storm is making it rain basically at a dam somewhere in Africa. It looks
reservoir dam, something like that. Yep.
And it sounds like she's revered as a god, obviously, but like she has kind of like ongoing list of tasks for different areas, and these people like bring gifts to her and stuff in gratitude of taking care of the different areas.
I love the phrasing where it was like, but we already had a celebration, and it's like, there's gonna be another one.
Yeah. They decide to go to Africa. Kitty has to talk Scott into going with them.
Yep.
It looks like he's not going to.
Yeah, sad Cyclops is like in the room by himself kind of scenario.
Then when the X-Men go out to the Blackbird, Forge comes out and he's like, "No, I just fixed this from the last mission." Yeah. So then when he scratches the thing, that's when that horrific reaction from Forge happens, and I feel for him. I'm like, man, they are just abusing you. And then that moment gets interrupted by Scott showing up in his like trench coat and everything.
Yep.
Back over in Africa, the most recent dark-eyed person that we saw,
the guy on the camel
transfers his like being. You just see this long. It's like that scene in the second Venom movie where you see the symbiote like jump between different people.
Would have had to have watched it and cared.
So this is similar, where it's like essentially it happens through touch. So every time someone like puts their hand on the shoulder or shakes hands or exchanges like goods or whatever, they're hopping sometimes as quickly as like seconds of a person. So you get the impression that this entity it's like electricity, has to like flow as a current through all these people. Finally, when it gets to like the line of not like tithing,
the receiving line for Storm,
for gifts to Storm, they literally just go up the receiving line, like touching shoulders up to her. I'm gonna have to give Storm some crap here because no one in this noticed this weird, because it visibly is happening. Like,
so I wonder, and we've talked about this, like, because it's a cartoon, like seeing like Domino's luck powers, for example.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is a scenario where they did it because the viewer could see the astral plane stuff, but I don't know if the characters could see the astral plane stuff. Just a thought.
Yeah, I could get that. It just the way they animated, though, it looked like a symbiote, like kind of transferring. And so they get the, I was going to call him, it's a Shadow King, gets up to the front of the line and then touches Storm and confronts her on the astral plane.
Yeah, it calls her a street thief and basically being like, you're finally returning to your master.
Yeah, and we get the T'Challa in the MCU type of origin story where it's like, it's about 3 seconds. So we see a flashback of Storm. It looked like more like a preteen or teenager than like a really little kid.
It's just pretty standard for that origin for her. And
at the time, he didn't refer to himself as Shadow King. It was Farouk. I don't know if I'm familiar with this story. I wouldn't be surprised if it's fairly common, but he didn't start off as this like demonic entity. He was like a guy.
So it was a guy who had these crazy psychic powers and then becomes the entity when the body got destroyed, essentially.
Okay, yeah. And so, in that flashback, it kind of implies, they don't actually really clear it up. He accuses Storm of like kind of keeping stuff to herself, like keeping some things for herself. We don't know if that's happening. It probably not. But then she basically says like, I kind of want out. And he reads her mind. It's like, oh, you found a new friend, Xavier. And then Xavier shows up.
Well, because she's basically saying, I didn't steal from you. The reason I have left or have less is because I spent less time stealing from people. I met a person, and that's when he does the mind read. So it's not that she's like skimming off the top. It's more so the whole like she's just like, oh, I just didn't spend all day being your thief.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And then Xavier shows up, confronts Farouk, and they quickly get into the battle on the astral plane. Storm is under the impression that he was destroyed, but then that's when Farouk reveals, like, no, without my body, I just became a Shadow King.
Yes.
Like, okay, you said the thing.
Yep.
So his spirit lives on, and he has to have, like, a physical host. So in Storm's body, it looks like he makes her start fires, which was an interesting concept, but you quickly realize it's a hallucination for her.
I didn't get that she was the one starting it. I think it was she saw fires.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. So I think like I didn't catch on that right away. So she's hallucinating the fires. So it tricks her into flying up and then starting a flood basically to get rid of the fires. Which is interesting because like that it sets up the Shadow King in this where he can't like possess you in like an exorcist sort of way, like make you do things, but he's just kind of trick, or maybe it's just maybe he can, and this is just more fun for him because she's doing it kind of on her own free will. Like,
I did see one thing online that theorized that because of something with Storm's powers, it kind of causes like interference because electricity and neurons and possession or something like that, which is why he could trick her, but it's harder for him to just straight up take her over fully the same way that he can with other people.
I can see that.
Yeah. Or it's a strength of will scenario is the alternate take of it, is like she's just a stronger person than the average guy who's like, you know, roaming through the desert desperate for water, you know?
Yeah. And so she starts flooding everywhere. We only see that village, but I guess we're supposed to assume that it's like quickly spreading to the rest of Africa. Then the Blackbird arrives, but she also hallucinates that the Blackbird is a giant fireball.
Which is terrifying.
Yeah. And she tornadoes it into the reservoir.
Yep. And then there's the continuity error of the episode between how it cuts to break and how it comes back from break. You see the jet has landed in the water. The jet is also like pseudo sinking, but everybody's knocked out cold. Cuts to commercial, comes back, and then everybody like pops out safely from the jet. Nobody's like half conscious or even like groggy and stuff like that. Which is a little bit like, why? Like, I get you do the animation to have the cliffhanger, but then if you don't address how everybody's like, you know, Emma wakes up and slaps everybody in the face to get them moving again, you know?
The water was cold. Woke him up. You know, the first thing I thought though was as soon as because the jet like hit like perpendicular into the water, and I was like, oh, Forge. That's my first thought. I was like, oh boy.
Oh, the jet is totally
my
fucked.
Poor boy.
Yeah.
I'm fully empathetic for Forge at this point. But yeah, when they...
And not because he tries to bang Storm in other series.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, that's interesting that he... Yeah, okay. And he doesn't interact with her yet so far in this show.
Not yet. Nope.
So Bobby kind of like ice slides them. It looked to me up to Storm, but it's more up to like the villages she's at, not up in the air. And then she... start seeing more fires, and I don't know what logic Storm had for this. She makes it hail, but like at knives, like not just like normal.
So people should have died here.
Yeah.
Like Wolverine is cutting like hail knives, like you're saying, with his claws. Cyclops is shooting them. Bobby makes like a little like bridge to cover it for safety, and then people start getting hit in the head with these things. Like Bobby gets knocked into the water, Kitty gets knocked from behind because she never knows when to not turn off her power.
Yeah, like,
but the way those things were shaped, they should be dead.
Yeah, and they addressed that because like you said, people were getting hit by it, and Emma at some point turns into diamond form to protect herself from it,
which. This is the first time in like an animated version of it that you see it. It had only been a few years prior that she had that reveal within the comics and stuff like that. So it was like, it's a really cool moment. And they did that cool job of like, well, why didn't you do this before? Like, why weren't you doing it when I almost killed you with Magneto? And it's like, well, then I can't use my psychic powers. And she's like, invulnerability is not as valuable to her as being vulnerable.
Yeah. It's a nice like kind of power balance.
Yeah, like that I'd rather have some level of control while using my telepathy than to give that up. Like, that's wild. So,
and at one point, like a hay roof comes off one of the buildings, takes out Bobby, and Kitty tries to save Bobby. But then
that's when she gets whacked in the head.
But then the knife hail takes out Kitty. But then Beast goes to rescue them. But then he's out of the game because he has to like make sure they're okay.
Make sure they don't drown.
Yeah. And that's when Emma does the diamond thing. She can't use her telepathy. Emma just immediately says, "Scott, shoot her down." And Wolverine's like, "What the fuck?" Like, no.
I agree with her.
Yeah.
I agree with Emma. Shoot her down.
Yeah. But Wolverine's like, "No, shoot me." And so he climbs up to like a higher vantage point and then jumps, and then that's when Scott like shoots him. He doesn't even get damaged though. He just like catapults further. You know what? I keep forgetting it's not a laser. It's a punch.
Concussing.
Yeah. So, and then he's able to tackle Storm and take her down. Emma goes into Storm's mind, and she kind of gets a look around. And then starts talking to Storm. It's like, what the fuck is going on? And then
Shadow King pimp slaps her.
I was like, that was so violent.
Yeah. But it's not the physical body, it's the astral version of it.
Yeah. Well, and the way they cut it too, you only saw Emma's reaction in the real world. Like they cut from, they don't show the whole thing, like the impact. Yep. And I know we joked in the last episode about like, there's a lot of boobs in the show. That I think was the most surprising thing, that they would show like a big domineering man like hit a woman like that, or kind of show that. But her reaction for that, she comes out of it, and then Wolverine talks to Storm, and he's like, what's going on? Emma's like, well, she knows the story now. So
what's wild is, though, to your point, I just did a quick double check to make sure I wasn't messing it up. This was on Nickelodeon. Remember, this show aired on Nickelodeon.
Jeez, yeah, that was wild.
Yep. And Nickelodeon and Nicktoons. So,
all right, children.
Yep. Cable.
So cable. That's right. So Wolverine talks Storm down, and she stops seeing the fire, and she stops all the rain and everything.
Her eyes go blue.
Yeah, and then Shadow King starts to go into Wolverine, but then Emma like comes out of her body and tackles Shadow King, and then they have the astral form fight.
Yes.
In the real world, Storm yells, "You have to keep him out because without a host, he won't survive." Which great plot point. I don't know. I think I've always seen this Shadow King as much more domineering than that. So it was almost a little disappointing to see this be such like a quick defeat.
Yeah, it happened fast because all of a sudden at one point he like got skinnier.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh wow, so he's essentially a parasite that if he's outside of a host for, what is it, 45 seconds or something like that, that was enough to take him out.
Yeah, because Emma, presumably because she still has a body, even though she's not in it, was able to kind of stay out, if not indefinitely, a much longer time than him.
Yeah, she's more anchored.
And so she basically keeps him busy by like manifesting weapons and stuff and keeps fighting. Wolverine saves her body, and the rest of the X-Men get away, so that it's just the astral forms fighting, and Shadow King keeps looking around for a body to jump into and can't. And I love
then she cuts him in half. It was like it was kind of brutal.
I love that Scott tries to shoot the astral form with the blast.
Scott.
That's so great. Yeah,
it's Scott.
Yeah, but you're saying cutting him in half. My note was like he starts withering away, but Emma Mortal Kombats him in half, and then this is the only thing that might be like a small thing that they could leave open for future episodes. He explodes into like kind of like glitter. Yes. And that might be like that could be interpreted, once again, don't spoil for us because we haven't seen it. That could be interpreted as kind of like a Sinister thing from 92 where he becomes like the sand on the beach or something.
You have Sinister in 92. You have Magneto dying in Asteroid M in space, and then from Evolution, remember, Magneto got turned into Sailor Moon dust.
Right,
so turning to dust in all of the X-Men cartoons does not insinuate permanent death.
Yeah,
so.
And this was one of the few times I like rewound and watched it because I was like, did we see something? And the way they animated it, it was literally just blip and then just sparkles everywhere. So it was like kind of, in nondescript of how he exploded. Mm-hmm. So then Emma returns to her body, and then this is the way I was talking about with the animation stuff. Like, you could tell
they have a fuck nod with each other.
I said knowing not, but okay. Sure.
No, you've been the one who's they're gonna bang, so I don't want to hear it.
I'm here for it.
No, but they also gave like each other like, so are we gonna, like, that was the look they gave.
Yeah. So they and I think you're supposed to take that as like they're respecting each other, but you could tell like in the whatever screenplay they were writing for this, if it was a live action, it would have been like a kind of an emotional, like knowing look to each other, but it ends up becoming this like weirdly animated like nodding.
Well, because the earlier in the episode, it's like, you don't treat the others like this. He's like, I trust him. He's like, they earn that every single day.
Yeah.
And this was supposed to, like, I guess, be the cap to that story of, he may not like say it's his favorite person, but it's like, at least he knows she was willing to risk her life for Storm, essentially.
Yeah.
So.
And trust her body with the X-Men while she was out of it. And then back at the mansion, Storm is with Xavier's body, and she's like,
with her giant hair again.
Yeah. So this way, my note here was at the end, Logan puts his arm around Storm, but the way it's animated, he has to cup his hand around her hair like it's a solid piece, like it's metal or something, like one of like Angel's wings or whatever. I was like, I know from the animation standpoint that makes sense, but I'm trying to picture this in the real life scenario. It's like kind of softly putting your hand around someone's long hair.
Practical standpoint is just, you and I are both in our 40s, we know this. Just don't touch a friend's hair. Like, if her hair is that big, just don't touch it. That's the right way to handle this.
I'm going to share a little anecdote here because I've learned a lot of things since growing my hair out. For people that knew me before, like, this is just a COVID thing, having long hair. But people just feel, it's kind of like tattoos. People feel like really empowered, specifically like middle-aged white women, mostly, I'd say, to just touch my hair, whether you know me or not. I'm not going to say exactly who it was. There was a person I knew that I hadn't seen in a long time, and we were at a Grammy event.
Okay, I was going to say our mutual friend Shayna, just to call her out, but not at a Grammy event. So,
at a Grammy event, and I hadn't seen this particular person in a long time, and she, so the event had like the normal like sandwich catering, like the sub sandwiches, and anyway, so we were eating, and we hadn't seen each other in a long time, and my hair was long last time we saw each other, but it's gotten longer. So she's like, "Oh my God, Rod, your hair is so long." And I just watched in slow motion her hand, covered in that like oil dressing that's in submarine sandwiches, comb through from my scalp down to the bottom of my hair, is down to my waist, and I crawled out of my skin. And I left the event early to come home and wash my hair. So yes, don't touch people's hair.
Yeah. If you've learned one thing from this show, the more you know.
Yeah, don't touch hair.
The one other tidbit that I did get from one of the wikis on this episode was the rain effects were actually CG. When there was the shots of the rain hitting the water, that was actually CG animation.
I think I know what you mean. Yeah, with the droplets.
And then when Storm stopped and the droplets stopped, that was a CG effect.
Mm-hmm. Interesting technology. 2009. That was a little behind. But yeah, I don't know. I love a Storm episode. I kind of preferred her goddess like design better than her like mansion X-Men. Weird like big hard apparently hair.
Mm-hmm.
But
big hard hair.
Yeah. But still not mad at it. Like, at least in this, she's checking all the for me, like what makes Storm, she's a goddess, you know. She's not too soft, you know, both.
But she also was like kind of like very humble about it. Like she doesn't want to be a goddess because she wants to be a goddess. Yeah. She's doing it because it like made those people feel empowered to go to her and give back and be grateful, and like it had a positive effect rather than like a ruler, like I want to be a god, you know, like that kind of shit.
And she can be powerful and domineering. Shadow
she
King
could have destroyed an entire continent, apparently. Right. So that's like we talk about, like Omega was not a common phrase until like the 2000s. That is the sign of an Omega mutant. If you could take out one of our few continents.
Yeah. And Shadow King obviously is like her main adversary, so he was both introduced and kind of disposed of pretty quickly in the same episode. Even in the short amount of time we had him, though, like that was kind of it's clever, you know. The portrayal, like he had to transfer through people and then kind of trick her into doing it.
I like the design of him more in this than I do in either of the two iterations from the animated series. Like you had the one that was like the flaming head vibe, and then you had like the astral armor, like the one that looked like an evil knight vibe. I like this pseudo demon version of him more. So
yeah, he looks like something that would be in the with the sulfur dimension or whatever that Nightcrawler goes to. Brimstone dimension. I'm so close. I'm always wrong.
You were very close. It smells like sulfur. Yeah. God, that's gotta suck being in a dimension that just smells like spoiled eggs.
Do you get used to it at some point?
I don't know. I don't live near sulfur springs.
Would you know if you didn't know? Kidding.
I've definitely not lived near sulfur springs my entire life. I'll say that.
We were before recording this episode. We were talking about air quality in the, because I don't know if you haven't heard, but LA just recently had the worst natural disaster fire episode in history. So we were just talking about like how's air quality and blah blah blah. And you asked me like how's the air around you. I was like, and I was thinking about, I was like, I think it's better. I know that by the numbers, but also like would I eventually get used to some of the bonfire smell or something? But it rained last weekend, so I think it is like objectively like cleaner than it has been.
Yeah, I got very lucky with where my house sits in the middle of it. When stuff was on fire, the air above me was blue. Like from my house, I think there was only one day where you could have actually directly seen one of the smoke clouds, which is wild considering it's not that far from any of them, but just the way the wind was hitting, it was like the Thursday or Friday you could see the Palisades smoke. Probably Friday, I want to say. And
I can say this now because we're far from it. I actually withheld this from people that I wasn't like personally friends with. So the first day when we were like, it was kind of like optional to evacuate. I was like, you know what? I should just go. I have a friend I can stay with in downtown. So I opened the door of my house because my car is only like 15 feet from my front door. I was going to like preemptively pack my car. Yeah. I opened the door and took the first breath and immediately vomited. And
wow.
I was like,
I didn't know that.
Wow, it's pretty bad. And so after I kind of like got myself together after that, I sealed all the windows and I went and looked at the air quality index. So the apparently like 300 is where like that's like kind of the highest number it registers at for at least the scale I saw, and that was like you shouldn't open your eyes in that air. We were at 460 that day.
Oh my god!
So like, all right, that makes sense why I threw up, because it was probably inhaled someone's like living room into my lungs and stuff. So
seriously.
Anyway, that all came from like didn't get used to that, but would you get used to the sulfur smell? I don't know. Tangent.
One thing we will say, like we definitely had friends who did get affected by that, and thankfully both of us we were lucky with everything that went on. But there are people who are still fundraising and everything like that. Lots of really good causes. If you're going to do a donation, which I encourage anybody to do if they can, look up who you're donating to and just like make sure it's legit, because that's the other problem. And granted, I'm saying this 4 weeks after the end of all of it by the time this episode airs, but like there were definitely scammers popping up and shit like that. So just be be aware of who you're donating to and the causes that you want to support.
Yeah,
So,
I was specifically going in and correcting friends of mine that were reposting a specific screenshot of the Guitar Center Foundation. So the Guitar Center Foundation does have, actually, I was just at NAMM as a big music convention, and they had a booth there where they were helping people. They were giving, I think it was like $1,500 towards instruments lost directly in the fire.
I think I saw that.
That's a real thing, but a lot of people were sharing one that someone had photoshopped with a different email that was skimming payment information.
Ugh, that's disgusting.
And I was trying to point out that it's the exact same image, but they just had replaced the text with a different email. So the thing I was trying to tell people there was like the image usually won't have, except for Music Cares, because Music Cares does have an email thing. But if you're part of Music Cares, like I'm part of Music Cares, they've already reached out to you about how. So, but with the Guitar Center thing, it wasn't an email. It's the real one has a link, so you can go to the Guitar Center website, the Guitar Center Foundation website,
right,
to apply. Not a Gmail account.
Yeah.
So
I mean, just if it ever just has a Gmail account on it, like that's automatically like the flag, you know.
So I know for me specifically, if you want, I posted on my Facebook and I'll repost it on my Instagram stories. There's a couple people that I personally can vouch for, but otherwise, I would say if you're outside of LA and you want to help, if you know someone here personally, just ask if you can drop some money in their Venmo or PayPal. I think that's the most efficient way because everybody has way different needs. And if you don't know anybody here personally, at your own discretion and research or the bigger organizations, because like everybody here is too busy to do that for you.
Well, and then the other part that's kind of fucked is like the FEMA aid. Like if people put certain words into their GoFundMe's, like FEMA would reject portions of the aid and stuff like that. Like that's also. So the stuff is burning and just continues to burn. Bullshit, you know. Yeah,
it's not a great time, but yeah. So anyway. But I think that the timing is actually kind of good because it's usually the weeks later where those people are going to need the most help because even the time we're recording this, the people I know that lost their homes, now is the time they're doing the insurance claims, they're rebuilding. I think there's some of them are just going to their the site, the locations of their former homes, like for the first times and stuff. So the year after is going to be when everybody actually needs the help more because the rest of the world has forgotten about it. So help if you can. If you can't, then there's other ways and stuff. Just reach out to people you know and see what the needs are. But on
that happy note,
in this episode, Storm didn't destroy Africa, so we're excited to see what the next week's Zordon Xavier mission is. I've been trying to be really careful of like as I'm scrolling through pages, like not even like looking at titles and like getting thumbnails and stuff like that. I'm like really trying to not spoil stuff for myself. The Disney Plus thumbnails, man. Like there needs to be like a spoiler setting. Anyway, well, thanks for joining us. If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them into the comments, either the YouTube upload or official Instagram post about this episode. And if you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app you're choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, and CastBox if you can still make us number one in 2025.
This is like the shortest episode that we've done in the past 2.5 years outside of interviews. And I feel like that's why your cat is still super sleepy because she's like, you guys shouldn't be done for another 15 minutes. Lucy alarm clock is, there you go. Good. Annoy your cat. That's a great way to end it.
Lucy, you get to eat now.